I'd like to share time with my colleague, Deputy Murphy. Just say at the outset, look, I welcome the opportunity, Minister, to speak on this, and I suppose it's timely again that we actually keep highlighting the fact that there is a major problem out there in society and across the broader economy in terms of the cost of insurance in general, motor insurance, public liability and other insurance that is required to be taken out to cover liabilities. And in that context, Minister, we have been talking about it a long time, and I know there's certain actions that have been taken. Primarily the actions that are establishing the facts as opposed to dealing with the consequences of those facts. In other words, we've established the cost of motor insurance. It has made recommendations. There was other recommendations that followed on from that. And we're slow in implementing those recommendations, which I believe would have a profound impact on the cost of insurance in this country. And you see, Minister, the cost of insurance disproportionately affects certain sections of society and the economy. For example, motor insurance disproportionately affects those on lower incomes and in rural areas. It has a profound impact on people on low incomes because simply, very often, they have to travel long distances for work because of the areas that they live in, because of the fact that they're in low income. And that in itself is an attack on those people's entitlement to at least provide a reasonable standard of living for themselves. But when you have people who are paying €2,000 and €3,000 for a car insurance, it can have a profound impact on a family. So that is a disproportionate effect on low incomes. On young people, we see it as quite a disproportionate effect as well because of the exorbitant costs attributed to taking out insurance for young people, and in rural areas as well. You represent a rural constituency. Rural people spend a vast amount of time in cars, on roads, to and from places of work, to and from places of socialising, and to and from places of education, etc. So the cost of motor insurance has a disproportionate effect on rural Ireland as well. So that's why there needs to be an immediate effort to address many of those severe impediments to people. So for this reason, we welcome this bill. We hope that it's brought forward quickly, it goes through the process, and that it has the impact that we hope it has. Of course, it's been very well drafted, there's been broad consultation, and there is acknowledgement of the fact that we did publish a bill in July, and parts of it have been included in this bill, or at least it nudged the bill in a certain direction. And for that, we welcome it. Public consultation was engaged in, I think, in 2014, and as I said, the flow from that was the establishment of the working group on the cost of insurance, and they have made their recommendations. And one of the recommendations, or some of the recommendations, are included in this bill. When you look at public liability, the Minister, and insurance that businesses have to take out, that also has a profound impact on people. And the reason being is the people who are taking out the insurance primarily are law-abiding, providing employment, going about their lawful duties on a daily basis. And we have this consistent scamming happening across this country in terms of fraudulent claims. It is consistent, and it's at epidemic proportions. And for a long time, we were turning a blind eye to it. And the reason we were quite happy just to keep loading the premiums. Business would keep paying, and the people who were taking out motor insurance would just keep paying. But something had to give. And of course, what gave was people just couldn't afford car insurance anymore. And there would be an outcry, and now we are reacting. But in the context of business, Minister, we have to accept that we cannot continually assume that business can keep paying exorbitant increases in their insurance. Insurance now, in some places, is costing more than the rates themselves. And that has to be addressed as well. And of course, one of the main reasons of the escalating cost of insurance is obviously the huge legal costs through litigation, but also fraudulent claims. And fraudulent claims are built in actuarially now at this stage to the premiums themselves. And we do nothing about it. We absolutely do nothing about it as a legislator, as law enforcement, as courts, as public prosecutors. Nothing is being done about it because there's been no prosecutions. for people who go to court, lie, present fraudulent evidence under oath, and take up massive amount of time telling, as I said, barefaced lies and presenting fraudulent evidence. And in the end, if it is found and struck out because it is fraudulent, there is no sanction. So it is a crime without sanction. It is a crime without consequence. That's what fraudulent insurance claims are. If you go into a shop and hop over the till or over the counter and take the money out of the till, there is a sanction. There'll be a guard investigation, there may be a prosecution, and there could be a conviction. But you can go into the same shop and fall on the toilet intentionally and pretend that you're hurt and go to court and seek compensation. And if it is found that it was fraudulent and you perjured yourself, there is no sanction. It's just struck out and you walk out of the court. And that has to be addressed, Minister. And the reason it has to be addressed is, number one, it is putting a huge cost into the insurance premiums, which is putting a huge cost on business. It forces legitimate businesses sometimes to cut corners elsewhere because they have to pay their rates, they have to pay their insurance, they have to pay their staff, and other things suffer. But it also is inherently wrong that law-abiding people aren't supported by the apparatus of the state in terms of people trying to scam them, not being prosecuted by the law agencies. And that, I think, is something that's profoundly unfair in society. And your leader, the Taoiseach, talks about people who get up early in the morning and that he wants to represent them. But most people who take out car insurance, most people who are in business, most people who have to take out public liability, farmers, shopkeepers, hoteliers, you name it, they're all people that get up at some stage anyway, but make a positive contribution to society and the economy, and there's nothing done for them when it comes to they being picked out as victims of a fraudulent claim. And not only is it the cost, it has a profound impact on the individuals themselves. People who are trying to pay their bills, people who are trying to pay their staff, trying to do what is right, trying to comply with the law, and they see this happening to them, and there is no hand of support being offered to them by the state. None. But I can assure you, Minister, the day that they cut a corner, they will be, the long arm of the state will be very quickly extended to them. And that has to be addressed. Now, in recent times, because of probably the issue of the highlighting of that, we do see that there is an effort by the insurance companies at long last to contest and to invest in unearthing fraudulent claims and unearthing those that perjure themselves in our courts. And that is welcome. But we have to go a step further and introduce a sanction whereby if you intentionally, knowingly, wittingly go to a court, perjure yourself and present fraudulent evidence, that there will be a consequence. And that's why I know you accepted the second stage of the bill we published, the private members bill, but I'm not really fussy who takes this on board, be it you, Minister, the Department, or from this side of the House, as long as it's done. As long as law-abiding citizens see that, yes, there is some support and protection for me from these criminals, because that's what they are, criminals. So I hope that the Civil Liability in Courts Bill, which intends to amend Section 26 of that, will come to the committee at some stage. I believe it's waiting for a money order from the powers that be that must allow a private member's bill to move forward. But I urge that you would use your good office to try and ensure that that comes either from your side, which will be fine by me, or from our side without the impediment of the money order or being used to squash it. When we look at the concept of insurance and the idea that it is there to protect the person who is injured, it's a very noble concept. So, as I said, that idea has to be protected. PIAB itself, of course, Minister, is a good concept. And we welcome the fact that the statutory or provisions will be in this bill that will strengthen it and enhance it and encourage more to go through the process of PIAB. And there needs to be supports of the legislation to ensure that people are obligated to at least cooperate with PIAB when it is making its assessments. And there has to be a continual review of the Book of Quantum. And of course, Justice Nicholas Kearns in his report was quite scathing, being truthful, when you read through the report of the awards that are being made. And high awards does have an impact. Now, high awards to people who are legitimately injured is reasonable. But awards to people who aren't is unconscionable, but happens every day of the week. So that issue has to be addressed as well. And I believe that the book Quantum, that will be reviewed on a continual basis by PIAB, has to adjudicate how it delivers and the awards it delivers, not based on the awards in the courts and the highest awards as the benchmark, but on comparables in jurisdictions elsewhere. Because we consistently move towards the highest award. Of course, that's what always happens. So if a person is injured and an award is made in the court, well, then the high award becomes the benchmark for everybody. Presumably the legal profession like the high awards. I mean, the 10% of the highest award is better than the 10% of the lowest award. I mean, there is an inherent incentive for the system to support the higher awards and the continual moving up of that. So that issue has to be addressed, Minister, to ensure that when we're making assessments on personal injuries, we make the assessments based on other jurisdictions and what is the norm there as opposed to what happens down in the courts on a regular basis. And that is something that I feel very, very strongly about. So look, Minister, when we look at PIAB, when we look at what it has achieved to date, and it did have an impact initially when it was originally set up, and of course what happened over a period of time was the legal profession looked at ways of manoeuvring their clients away from it and shepherding them back into the courts, of which there is more bountiful remuneration down there. But our obligation in here is not to fund the forecourts indirectly through higher awards. It is to ensure that people who are legitimately and genuinely injured seek fair compensation, and those who are trying to seek compensation when they're not injured should be punished. So, Minister, I support this bill. I welcome it. I thank the Department for their efforts in the consultation process and the fine drafting that was put into the bill itself, and the fact that they took some of our ideas on board as well in this new era of new politics, Minister. And to say that we support that. But and while I'm on my feet, I just urge that you would look at our private members' bill, Minister. Either allow us to move it forward, or you take ownership of it. I'm not a covetous person, but it would, I believe, send out a strong message that scammers and fraudulent chancers and criminals will be punished by this state when they try to dip into the pockets of legitimate individuals and businesses through fraudulent claims.